Good morning. Today's gospel is the parable of the 10 pounds, found in Luke chapter 19, verses 11 through to 27. Now, you're probably more familiar with the 10 talents as found in Matthew 25. I'm not going to take the time to read this passage, but I would encourage you to read both accounts for yourself, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Luke's gospel is written to the Gentiles and has a very different tone. His focus is on the poor, the oppressed. The story goes like this. A nobleman goes to a faraway country seeking royal power. Now the citizens hated him and did not want him as a ruler. He gives 10 pounds, about 3 months' wages, to his slaves to trade and do business with in his absence. Upon his return, he calls for his servants to see how they have managed. The first slave steps forward and says that he has increased his pound to 10. Well done! You will be in charge of 10 cities. The second slave has increased his to 5. Well done! You will be in charge of 5 cities. The third slave timidly approaches the master and says, I knew you were harsh, and I was afraid, so I hid the money till your return. And he hands the master back the pound that he had been given. He is called wicked, and his money is taken from him and given to the one with 10. Those who have more will be given, and to those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Now, the crowd is obviously upset with this decision. Then the master's wrath turns on his enemies, demanding that they be killed where he could watch. Through our Western eyes, the 2 servants who doubled their money are good and faithful. But the third, who buried his money for fear of losing it, is seen as wicked and lazy. You see, we view success as increased profit, power, or recognition for a job well done. The exhortation to use our gifts, even take risks for God's glory. But in turn, we expect praise or to be rewarded. Now, one commentator gave a very different perspective, how the parable might have sounded to Jesus' listeners. He says it would have been the third slave that would have been praised, and the other 2 condemned, because they profited at the expense of others. You see, for one to profit, someone else would have to lose. So this would have been seen as morally wrong. Now, Luke's account seems to support this view. Onlookers are displeased with the decision to take the man's 1 and give it to the one with 10. Now, one of Jesus' most frequent teachings was about the kingdom of God. This story seems to go against the notion of a kingdom that values unity and justice. Still, it is but one illustration of God's rule and our place in this kingdom. To me, the master sounds cruel and cunning, out for his own profit, nothing like the good shepherd who lovingly cares for his followers. I probably would have been in the group who did not want him as my king. I admit that my perception is biased by the current political situation, where leaders are attempting to hold on to power, no matter what the cost or its effects. So while I don't understand what Jesus is trying to teach, this passage holds an invitation to look deeper and allow God's truth to penetrate our hearts. How do we serve and promote the kingdom here on earth? If we expect to be rewarded with recognition or praise, then how are we different from the first 2 servants? What experiences make us see the master as harsh and cruel? Do we serve out of a sense of fear and duty, or from love, regardless of the cost or outcome? When I first began meeting with my spiritual director about 9 years ago, she shared that her paradigm had shifted many times over the years. At the time I thought, how can this be? God's truth doesn't change. Well, think we were both right. God is unchanging. It is our understanding that deepens and shifts as we discover more about the nature of God. You see, I firmly believe that God would bless if we used our gifts for His glory, and we would face punishment if we acted from our own self-interests. But over time, my paradigm shifted to a God who accepted me just as I am, loved me in spite of all my failings. And this felt so comforting for a time. The problem was that this concept of a loving God still held the expectation that I was entitled to a certain amount of blessing as a beloved child. So I became angry at God when life didn't turn out as I thought it should. Now the anger has become a catalyst for yet another shift. To be angry with God meant that I wanted to be in a relationship with Him. You see, if I didn't care, I would feel indifferent. So today I am wrestling with the balance between heart and mind. God isn't the kindly old grandfather that I can wrap around my finger to get whatever my heart desires. I am learning, rather reluctantly, that God's love carries the burden of putting aside our wants for His. It may take us places that challenge and make us uncomfortable. Blessing is sometimes masked by pain and discouragement. I know this doesn't sound like good news, and many days it doesn't feel that way either. But I realize that my reflections are just that, my thoughts. But I trust it will encourage us to read the Bible with open hearts and inquisitive minds. Let me leave you with some questions to ponder. Where is God calling you? What misconceptions do you have to let go of to hear and respond to God's voice? Now, don't worry about getting it wrong. God will always gently and patiently call you back. Just don't be surprised if the path takes you in a direction you never thought to go. So take courage. Remain open and attentive. You may find hidden treasures along the way. God bless you. Until next time.